Shane, Tim, how are you?
I'm good.
So, hey, you know, we were talking over at SHOT Show over in Las Vegas about 6 months ago. You were venting a little bit, talking about batoning, how it's so controversial, yet a huge amount of your warranty claims is due to tip failure, people prying on their knives. Now, I've been talking with my buddy Joe from Survival Attitude, and you know, we were thinking, let's bring this a little bit deeper, right? It's really about the right tool for the right job. It's not the tip testing thing, it's the right tool for the right job, right?
Absolutely. First and foremost is but then also it's about knowing the limitations of whatever equipment is that you're using. So whether it's a 1095 blade or a higher Rockwell stainless blade, it's really up to the user to understand the limitations of whatever it is you're using.
That's right.
And so if you treat everything like a hammer, then everything's an anvil, you know? So let's be smart about what we're using. And I see a tool as a resource, so let's protect that resource and use it for its designated task in case there does come a time where you have to use it outside that task. If it does become a survival situation scenario or something, then you got to go outside the lines, but you don't try to create those problems.
Well, and you got to remember, and people forget this sometimes, the original intent of the knife design had that use in mind. You are very practical and task-driven as a company.
Absolutely.
Right? So your designs emulate those tasks that you had in mind when you designed it in the first place. Now, you can't control what customers are picking up your knives, right? They're coming from all walks of life, all different tasks, and all different minded. So again, to your point, understanding that tool, the design elements behind it, and what that steel, what that material, the thickness, even all the way down through the fine details, the thickness of the tip. It's not the fact that you started with a 3/16 spine, it's the fact that by the time you get down in those, you know, plunge lines and grind lines all the way down to your relief edges, I mean, at that point, well, yes, that's going to act differently from knife to knife, from model to model, and task to task.
Yeah. So what you would use a CR 2.5 for is you're not going to use it the same way that you would an ESEE 5.
Correct. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to cut. We're going to go to some field testing. We're going to break out a bunch of your models, and we're going to put some of this to practical use. We're going to bring this conversation a little bit deeper. What do you think?
I would love to see it.
All right.
And so I love seeing people do real world stuff. Anybody can shoot our knives with a gun. But what we really like to see is we really like to see people to use them in the way they're made. And then if you're going to use them to test them, then test them in a real world laboratory, not in some kind of dream world or some experience scenario.
All right, well, I'll tell you what, we're very much, I would say, woodscraft, firecraft types. I think a lot of people that use your knives, you know, obviously you have a whole tactical side and people that are more operators that are going to use them, but your general users can connect to some sort of firecraft, some sort of woodscraft. So let's go to some firecraft and woodscraft tasks. Let's get these models out there. Let's give them a run. So, Shane, appreciate it, man. We'll follow up with you soon. Hey there, everybody. Eric from Outer Limitless here with the Out of Doors episode 7. I'm sitting beside none other than Joe from Survival Attitude. What's up, buddy?
Good morning, Eric. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning. Hey, fantastic to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity here at your humble abode.
My abode is your abode, brother.
This is awesome. We have a really exciting video here today. You know, we've been talking about this actually for quite a while. You saw the introduction with Shane from ESEE Knives, so Shane, thank you very much for that. You know, he brings up some really interesting points as somebody who's deeply involved in ESEE's warranty and claim service and really, you know, helping out the customers. He sees a lot of trends. Now, this whole thing started with sort of the debate about batoning. Batoning can be a little bit controversial. Some people really don't believe batoning their knives, but if you're an ESEE fan, you've probably done it from time to time. Now, Shane's point is, he actually has a lot more warranty claims from people abusing the tip and, you know, prying and different things like that. But we talked about this and said, let's get a little more in depth. Maybe it's not so much about the batoning, maybe it's not so much about the prying, but it's really understanding your tool, using the right tool for the right job. And I don't care if it's, you know, ESEE or otherwise. This goes for any tools, including knives. In this particular case, we have an awesome test subject with ESEE knives. What do you think, Joe? The right tool for the right job?
It's everything, you know, and going into the challenge before we go into the opportunity, I'll give you just a real quick example. So a close buddy of mine went on a camping trip and canoe flipped over. It was cold, even in the summer. This is way up north, and after the trip, he told me he broke his buck knife. And I said, whoa, 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 just curious, because we love all different manufacturers here. I said, was it a Buck branded knife or a Buck style knife you got in Walmart? He goes, how'd you know it was the latter? I said, okay. And so in the end of the day, he had to baton through a pretty big log. That knife was probably a $20 knife. We don't know about the heat treat, probably thinner stock, and it didn't get him out of that jam, okay? He's not a survivalist bushcrafter, he just had the one tool. It doesn't matter what you have. If you have one tool and you are in the out of doors, you need to study that tool. You need to research that tool, and what we called it, Eric, is backyard bushcraft. Do some practicing with it. If it fails in your backyard, it's going to fail in the field. But we're going to go into some technical aspects of blade shape, geometry, rock-wool hardness, steel type. If you don't know any of that, you can just take a look and say, is this a really thick knife? Does it have a really thin tip? There's some things we have to really understand before we get into the bush. It's going to help us out of a jam, because it can happen.
No, it's really important. And, you know, just at an initial glimpse, and it's funny that you said the buck knife example, but just here, I mean, these two knives, at face value, if you look at them real quick, you would think they are literally exactly the same, but they're not. You need to be very careful, and these are both the same, pretty much the same model of an ESEE knife, but we're going to talk about it. So here in the out of doors, well, Joe, there's a few things about the out of doors we need to certainly accomplish. I mean, first and foremost, it's about the blades. Second, it's about being out here enjoying time together in the out of doors, but it's about making some food, and most specifically making some coffee. I don't know about you, Joe, but I need my coffee.
I need my coffee, Eric. How are we going to make it?
Well, so we're going to do a few different things today to really show and demonstrate these knives. We're going to get into some fire prep, we're going to get into some food prep, and then we're going to talk about some utility tasks. Now, there's no doubt that ESEE knives has operators and, you know, military personnel, law enforcement that utilize these knives, but for the general user, somebody who's going to be your typical, you know, customer and typical user of these knives, I think they could relate to some fire prep, some food prep, and some of those utility tasks. What do you say?
Camping, hunting, the genre is huge. In the end of the day, it is the out of doors.
All right, well, let's turn the corner here. Let's get into some fire prep. What do you say?
I'm hungry, and I'm getting a little chilly. It's a little bit breezy here in the fall. Let's do this.
Let's do it. All right, so Joe, in front of us, this is combined our ESEE collection. Now, if this is really any indication of what we think about ESEE knives, the quality of ESEE knives, and the experience that we've had with ESEE knives, I don't know what else would be. This is pretty serious horsepower here.
I'm not a fan.
But what we need to do, we really need to start getting into this fire prep. So the first thing is processing down our wood. And for me, and the way I think about it and the way I operate when I'm actually in the wilderness, getting the biggest wood and then process that down smaller and smaller and smaller. So the first thing for us is really going to be some chopping. And there will be some limitations in these models. We really need to think about those tasks and, you know, why we are choosing the knives we would choose. So, Joe, out of all these, what do you think? What should we do?
You can go largest to smallest if you want to take that route, starting with the hungless, kind of work our way down. Again, going into its effectiveness, limitations, and we can spread that all the way down to, you know, the camera room.
So I mean, when we're talking about the chopping, of course, there's going to be a size limitation, a weight limitation, you know, the physical limitation of the knife. There's also the geometry, the handle, you know, how it fits in the hand. The hungless is really the intended tool. And, you know, does ESEE have, you know, an axe? They do. But in this particular case, we're not talking about axes. We're talking about the knives. So the hungless really is the tool in ESEE's collection for this particular task.
All day long. Hot tropical weather, vining, cold extreme weather, when we start to get to frozen core of hardwood, we have that span. And typically, in my opinion, the colder the weather, the bigger the fire you need, right? You just have to sustain more. You want to get it cooking and get out there less. So to chop the big ends, you need the hungless.
Yeah, man.
So chopping tasks really want that length. You want that pendulum swing to limb, to break branches down, even to break down longer logs into smaller pieces. Hungless, we know. ESEE 6, we got a couple here. Got some great length. Okay, thinner stock, but we have that ability to chop. I'm gonna get that weight right down with a nice full flat. It's gonna delimb like nobody's business. Okay, going into the 5, we got some shorter length here, but we do make up for it in weight. We've got some great weight here, some 1/4 inch thick stock, same familiar handle as the 6. But when you throw a pinky lanyard on any of these knives, especially if you've got the weight of the 5, you just get that cracking right down, and we could do some chopping. Okay, less for size, but we can still get the job done. I have done some chopping with the 4, but that's where things kind of fall short. Just don't have the distance, don't have the length, we don't have the weight, really lightweight. So I would say that's where I draw the line. If we need to do some chopping, we could do some cross batoning or delimbing with the baton. Just gotta hope that we find a pretty solid piece of wood to do it. Often when I'm in the woods and I have to chop, I can't find a good piece of hardwood. So the weight of the 5, the length of the 6 does it right. But anything else smaller might not be the right tool for the right task.
All right, so as Joe had mentioned, the ESEE 6 is definitely going to give us the ability to do some of those chopping tasks. Here I have an aftermarket handle. You'll notice it's a little bit slab-sided. The ESEE 6, the nice thing is there's a lot of aftermarket support. They also have the palm swells. So, you know, if depending on exactly which model you get, you can get the palm swell. Now this is the standard ESEE 6. The other thing we're going to test out here, which will be interesting really to get an understanding, this is the ESEE 6 HM. It has a little bit more of that broomstick style handle. So for the chopping tasks, how's it going to index? So not only do you sort of need to think about, yeah, it's an ESEE 6, but maybe you choose one model versus the other depending on your needs. So in this particular case, it'll be interesting to test out the HM versus the original and really see which one performs better, if there's any difference. Maybe they're exactly the same and just gain some impressions. So we're going to give each one of these a try.
A few options, Eric, we didn't talk about was the classic CM6, older model, but we have some great length. We've got the ability, because we actually do have nice shouldering here on this high saber, so we could do some cracking, but we also have a little bit of a swoop in the back. So I think in the end I want to give this a try for some chopping. Also, the classic laser strike. As you saw in the comparative, we got a lot more length than the 4. Got some real nice thick slabs here, micarta. Got a really high saber, so we can get some cracking, but we got some good length for some chopping with a little bit of hook in the back. You can lock in and bring it right down. So I've never chopped with these two, and I'm excited to see how they perform. I think we should throw it in the chopping mix.
All right, so we're going to do a couple of different limbing tasks here. First, we're going to go with the 6. Now I'm gonna run both the standard 6 and the HM, so I get a little bit of an impression on how each one performs and how it feels in the hand. Whacking my knuckles. All right. So that's the standard 6, as you can see. It's actually kind of nice having that little pinky lanyard. Joe, you do that a lot, which is awesome, so that really helps out. And you can see, you know, a couple times I was definitely bouncing off the branches. You can see the ones where they actually cracked. Takes a little bit, but some real nice clean cuts. And that's the thing, the SE6 being a full flat grind all the way to the top of the spine, 3/16 of an inch thick, 1095, has that sort of medium Rockwell. Gets you to around, I want to say 56 to 58, somewhere in that range. So a good quality steel for this and great option. So let's go to the HM, get a little bit of a different feel here. So again, with the HM, having that little pinky lanyard, this actually came like this already set up, which is cool. And you'll notice this particular model does not have a finger choil, so I actually get a little bit more blade length. Same stock thickness and a different handle. Again, a little more of that, I'd call it maybe broomstick style, but it feels really good. Brand new factory edge. You can see. Real clean cuts. No problem there. And there you go. Actually, feels really good. I like the way this feels in the hand. No hot spots, really locking in well. And the fact that it's even a little bit round compared to the standard SE6 handle, I don't have any problem with it. It's not like it was spinning in my hands or anything. So I would say this is definitely a solid option.
Here we go. Freshie SE5 bone stock, no pinky lanyard. Want to see what kind of weight we can get out of this thing. Delimbing as is. Bring it right back. That nice sweep on these blades, just get you locked in. Too bad for this guy because you're going down quick. No brainer. You guys know how I.
You can clearly see, even though the 5 does not have the same length as the 6, it will do this work easily. So for limbing tasks, I can say I definitely recommend the 5. Perfect knife. Now keep in mind with this entire video, this is not really so much of like a comparison or a versus. We're really just trying to show the knives in the SE lineup that can do these tasks. So here, the CM6, again, it's gonna be a good option. Enough blade length, nice handle, should make it right through. Again, factory edge, brand new knife. Let's give this a shot. Feels a little lighter, of course. I'm coming off of hitting with the 5, but nice and clean. No problem with the cuts. That's gonna do it easily. There you go. Now, of course this can do it. I would suggest some sort of a lanyard. You do not have that lanyard hole. This does feel like it wants to slide away on me just a little bit while I'm doing those sort of striking tasks, so you need to be a little bit careful. The fact that this does not have a lanyard hole, it's just a consideration.
So we got the laser strike here. This is a new acquisition for me. Watching a video with Shane and Jeff at Smoky Mountain Knife Works, they had that budget limit, pick a knife, pick a survival tin, whatever. Shane picked this, which I thought was pretty interesting, so I had to grab one myself. Never really limbed with it, but let's take a look. No pinky lanyards, so we do have a little bit of hook in the back. And obviously we're getting, less diameter in the branches as we work our way down. But but still getting a sense of how it's performing. It is taking a, wow, kind of didn't expect that. Wow. That's pretty impressive. Controllable, very balanced, light in the hand, but just, to me, it cut a little better than I thought. I'm very impressed with the laser strike for delimbing.
So each one of the knives here today with a slightly different grind. The laser strike here, I would call this a very high saber grind. And I was actually pretty impressed at watching Joe do some of the limbing tasks. Thought it'd be worth me giving it a try myself. Obviously the blade length a little bit shorter than the other knives we've tried so far, but seems to be happy with these tasks. Real clean cut. Makes its way through with ease. Now my impression of this, it does have maybe just a slightly shorter handle, and when I say shorter, really just the area between these kind of little choils here. So your little, finger choil and a little pinky choil there, a little bit of a palm swell, a little bit slab-sided, but at the same time, it'll definitely do that work. So I mean, you can get away with it with the laser strike. Really cool. So the last model we're contemplating doing the limbing tasks, the SE4. So here we have two different versions, one with serrations, one with a plain edge. Now Joe's here with the serrations does have a pinky lanyard. This one does not. But the nice thing, it has the lanyard hole, so to each their own. You can also get these with the palm swells. These happen to be the original factory slab-sided handles. But as we get into this here, probably the practical limitation for some limbing tasks. So now as we get into this, I'm definitely going to struggle a little bit, but mostly from the standpoint that at this point, your hand gets very close to the working surface, and as you go to strike, you're probably going to do some damage to your knuckles, whacking into the bark, whacking into branches. And that's another reason why the smaller the knife, it just becomes a practical limitation for your ability to functionally work. And as I'm mentioning, I'm literally whacking the branches with my fingers. Of course, the blade's going to be sharp enough to cut through the branches, no problem. You can see nice clean cuts. But it does lack a little bit, both in mass and in handle length. Now this is where the pinky lanyard really can help. It does a couple things. At this point, I can literally get my hands further back, which is going to help get my hands a little further away from the working surface. Gives me a little bit of that pendulum swing. Real thick branch here, a little bit impractical, but that's the whole purpose of the outdoors. You can see I'm struggling with control. My strikes aren't accurate. That's a couple of reasons for that. The handle length. This blade is just literally the handle just trying to come out of my hands. That's part of it. I'm trying to avoid totally nailing my hands on the working surface, and just not a lot of blade length, not a lot of mass. And of course, if you at least weaken your branch, sometimes that's all it takes to get down and through something. So can you do it? Sure. And to Joe's earlier point, you could use this to kind of cross baton, whittle your way down and through this, kind of beaver that out a little bit. But for chopping, limbing, it's getting a little bit small, a little bit light. All right, so what we're gonna do to further demonstrate the chopping tasks, at this point we've laid out a board beginning to end with all the knives that we've talked about. We're gonna now introduce the Hungerless for the heavy chopping tasks. I think you'd all realize that the Hungerless could certainly do those limbing tasks, but now getting into this, we're gonna basically do a 10 chop test with each one of these blades, see kind of what we get for results. I mean, they may vary, but there's only one way to find out, and that's to get into it.
You've got some consistency with this piece of oak railing, so that's nice for a controlled environment. Don't mark my spelling on the Hungerless, but it is what it is. 10 chops.
Joe, I think you got me beat.
Well, I went
yours
wider,
is,
you went deeper.
Yeah. Is that 10?
Call it 10.
10.
Yeah.
SE6 standard.
SE6 standard.
6 HM. Oh, a little bit there. That's close. I'd say that's about it.
You went wide.
I did.
I went narrow. Harder than it looks with that piece of oak railing.
This is hard.
Yeah.
This is hard stuff.
Well, SE5. Here we go.
Ooh, nice.
Compared to the 6, the one thing is I felt that it had less control. I tried to get the line away, and just without that lanyard, the weight wanted to bring it back at the different locations. The 6, I felt with just that nimbleness, the little bit lighter, but had the length, I felt that I could control it a lot easier. But this thing, when it bit pretty hard.
CM6. Couple of tough strikes there. I was trying to get this to chunk out. Now, I can tell you, look at the grass on my hand. There's a reason for that. Every single strike is down onto the surface, trying to get that weight. So you either need to get this up off the ground for your work. Would have been nice to have that little pinky lanyard on there. It can do it. I just feel like you're gonna struggle a little bit.
Laser strike. Here we go.
Nice strikes.
Can't cheat, but if I did, where are we at? I'm just curious. It performs better than I thought it would. Very impressed with this knife.
So I'm definitely intrigued. I mean, having this in my hands, I might as well use it. So I'm gonna give it some chopping tests. I'm gonna go in the same spot as Joe. Give it 10 chops here. I mean, my problem and some of this is me, but when I start to get into the shorter knives and the way I hit, you know, Joe, I feel like you are definitely coming down with your hand up off of the ground. I mean, I'm more like, it's probably the drummer in me. I mean, I definitely start punching the ground. I mean, I'm working down on the surface, so I don't know if that's taken away from the actual, you know, like capability of the knife, or if I'm just literally just punching the ground and it doesn't matter. But you know, to me, when you start getting into the shorter knives, shorter blade length, shorter handles, it's going to be a bit of a struggle. So laser strike is on the edge for me, although I was pretty impressed with it doing the limbing tasks. So I mean, still in that survival knife class, I'd say. And speaking of shorter blades, well, here we go with the 4. Now for this particular chopping test, I am gonna sort of seat this up just to give me a little bit of room here. And let's give this a try. So this is the standard, the you know, full length blade, no serrations, so plain edge. Ugh, what was that? I cannot even get a full grip on this. This really does require a pinky lanyard. Look how far off my strikes are. I mean, totally user error, I'll give you that. But at the same time, with a pinky lanyard, I think it would make a big world of difference. In fact, before I even let Joe go, I'm gonna try it here with his serrated version. Let's give this 10 more chops. I mean, still a struggle, but a little bit better. Not great, very light, short handle. It's not quite gonna do it, in my opinion, for the chopping tasks.
Do a quick 10 without the lanyard, quick 10 with the lanyard. Serrated, but it won't make a difference because I'm going to try to focus on the belly. No lanyard. A little deeper bites. Control was a little bit wonky because I threw the knife so far back that I really started to get the swing. I think in the end of the day, we're coming up to a conclusion is the right tool for the right task. SE4, great all-purpose utility knife. Chopping might not be your best option.
Hear that crack? So the Hungless, of course, the largest knife in ESEE's collection. This is 3/16 of an inch. Nice long blade length. Get some good heft, good weight, good swinging power. But more so, you heard the crack. The nice thing is this is a high saber grind. Anytime I get into splitting, I do really like a saber grind. Now, there are some competitors' knives, I'm not going to mention them, very, very similar. Full flat grind makes a big difference. This will outperform most other knives in its class due to the fact that the geometry, the blade shape, the size, the length, the overall thickness, thick enough. Doesn't need to be 1/4 inch to do what it's going to do. But for the batoning tasks, the splitting tasks, the Hungless is going to be the king in the ESEE collection. Sorry, Joe.
Worth it.
Shin splitter.
Ow!
Okay, so at this point we're going to get into some batoning. Now, each one of these knives is going to have a consideration due to the length of the blade and the overall capabilities. Some other things to note. Okay, we got to be a little bit careful because we do have some different steels. So the steel is going to matter. And then the other thing worth consideration, the actual grind. So as we look at this, different knives, different grinds, different considerations. All things worth noting, but we're going to get into it.
All right, here we go. Start with the 6. Full flat, no shoulder, no saber. So we do have the potential to kind of wedge in a little bit, but we got some great length. So, and we have a choil, which we're not really going to need for batoning. Okay, but does give a nice option to have some nice safety back here. Keep our finger well away from the batoning strike. Right down the middle, see where we're at. Nice little set in the center. A couple more. I bring it right down until I can't center anymore. Then I bring it a little up. I think I'm through. Nice. Looking at these two models, the standard 6 and the 6 handle modified. Okay. Note we have the same exact cutting length, but got about an inch longer on the standard. And with that broomstick style, a funny feeling when we get into feathering and different things, we get some twisting. Okay, we're able to get a little bit more comfort with a wider variety of tasks. Choil, okay, we have that option to choke up. This we're choking up almost to the point of kissing that little edge right there. But for batoning, let's baton the same exact type of log and width and see how they perform. We'll start with the HF. It is nice back here to be able to hold laterally on the pommel. It just feels really good. That was awesome. Now let's try it with the standard. Get a little bit of control back here with the pinky. You can bring it right back to keep it farther away for safety with batoning. I kind of like that. A little bit different varied in the wood. I wouldn't say it was easier because of the knife. I would have to say it was because of the wood. But the bigger difference was I just felt really safe bringing it farther away. I feel like subconsciously I was able to make a larger swing. This felt a little bit better batoning. Just my opinion.
So now moving on to the CM6, again, some considerations worth noting. You're going to get that same 3/16 inch stock thickness, similar handle length to the standard SE6, but you do have a sharpened swedge, so this might beat up on your baton a little bit. It's also not quite as flat across the top, so you may have a little bit of an angle to contend with, but we're going to play with this anyway and see how it does. You get a nice saber grind. That's a difference here, so nice mid-height. I'd say 2/3 of the way up the blade, so this should do a pretty good job on cracking. Now this particular piece of wood maybe just a little gnarly. I'm going to take a couple of bites at it and not try to go the whole way across. Well, you know what? You know what we say around here, just send it. Real nice cracking action, actually feels really good. Not a lot of shock in the handle. Had a couple little miss swings there, but not a big deal. And watch this. With that saber grind versus the actual standard 6, you get a little bit more of a cracking action. This is a better side to show you. You can see it's really starting to sort of wedge its way through the wood and blow it apart. So the saber grind does a fantastic job for batoning. It's actually worked very well. As you can see, it did have some knots in the wood. That can typically make it a little tougher.
Blew right through it though.
Blew right through it. Nice job.
The 5. We know how I feel about the 5. I love you, buddy. Here we go. This is a really, really solid piece. We're gonna go right down the center. See where we end up. Look at that cracking right away. I'm not even fully in. We're starting to break apart this wood. But we really have to be focused on where we hit this because we're starting to lose on the length advantage like the 6s. What? I'm not joking here. The 6 would not have done that. It would bind and bind and bind until it hits the top spine and start to separate. Because we have like a little more than half on that shoulder, and that's a thick shoulder, that wood stood no chance. That was what, 3-4 strikes, and we split one of the most solid pieces we have. So effortless. Love the 5. So here we go with the laser strike. This is actually my first time batoning with it. We've got a probably 80+% up high, a little bit of shoulder on that saber. So we have a lot of flat to contend with, which is obviously great for slicing. But we got some really good blade length here. Choil, I'm going to stay behind it. I want to keep my distance when I baton it. We got some 3/16 stock, same as the SE6. Let's see where we go with this thing. My very first time batoning with this guy. I gotta do it again. It's just so much fun.
So you'll notice I personally keep coming back to wanting to test this laser strike. So far, I am really impressed with this knife overall. It's doing a great job in almost every task. And I love fire, craft, and just food prep outside more than anything. So having knives that just are effortless and just enjoyable and fill the like just multiple roles, I love that. So, I mean, right away, incredible cracking action. It's literally effortless. This laser strike is definitely impressive. I love a saber grind. I've always said that. I used to be a bigger fan of flat grinds, and just over time, learning that, quite frankly, a nice saber grind is superior, but that's just my opinion. This laser strike is sweet.
So we know we've reached some limitations with the 4 for chopping. However, I have a lot of field time with my 4. I'm going to tell you a couple quick things about it before I reel on this. We have serrations. I think ESEE serrations is some of the industry best because you can sharpen them full length, and it doesn't affect the actual cutting ability. It sharpens it as one because the way they're cut and angled. Now I have hollowed out a very large piece of the steel in this knife to give it some more balance and lightweightness as I carry it. Not that it could impede in performance, but just know that it's completely skeletonized in this portion here. What I do like about the 4 for batoning, it keeps its thickness really aggressively to the end. I feel very confident I'm not going to snap the tip off on this knife. Some other knives, the way they do their flats, they start to thin out real quick and to the point of almost being paper thin up front. That's actually relatively thick, but let's test it. Big piece, we're not going to have much tip out, so we really got to send and pray. I'd have to say this wood just seemed a little bit not as knotty as others, but the effort to just getting it done was incredible. I batoned a lot of wood with the 4. Great great batoner for the size of wood that it's capable of.
So I don't know if you remember our intro, but I said these two knives, even though they look the same, are quite different. This is where this might make a difference. In fact, I'll say it definitely does. We do need to take into consideration the actual material. So here, 1095, here, S35 VN. Now, in terms of Rockwell hardness and heat treat, this here, the 1095, this is 55 to 57 HRC. Here on the S35 VN, 59 to 60. Now, why does that matter? Well, when you get into things that have shock, like batoning, it could really make a difference. Now, in terms of toughness, toughness comes from a knife's ability to flex and bend. The lower HRC, this is going to have a lot of flex and a lot of give on the 1095. Well, what's going on with the S35? If you're not careful, hit it the wrong way, or just the knife is not happy with what you're doing, you have the potential to snap it. It might be a little more brittle, a little less tough. It means you might get some better edge retention overall. It's going to be harder to sharpen in the field, but it's going to also have some stainless properties. So S35 VN, striking a balance between the carbon steel, which can rust in a humid environment, and having these stainless properties. So you need to think about your choice here carefully. So again, this is the SE3, getting shorter in terms of the blades that we've actually tested today. Now getting into the batoning, you're not going to be able to span anything significantly long, but we do have some wood that we've already processed down, and it should be a suitable test. So I'm going to do my best to actually stress these knives. I'm not going as far as to try to break them, but if it happens, it happens. Keep in mind the thickness. This is only 1/8 inch thick stock versus the rest of the knives that we've taken a look at today, either 3/16 or 1/4 inch in regards to the SE5. So let's give this a shot here. Now, in terms of the span, this log is certainly much larger than what I should be batoning, so I'm going to have to take some bites. I'm starting with the 1095, and I'm going to kind of nibble away at this a little bit. Let's see if we can do it. And you can see here, that's about as far as I can go and still get on the tip, but it means I'm whaling on the tip. And again, as I mentioned, you can do it. You just need to take manageable bite-sized pieces. I have absolute faith in ESEE's 1095 with the renowned Rowan heat treat, no problem. But what about the S35 VN? Well, again, keep in mind the fact that it might be a little bit more brittle. The other thing to consider, temperature can matter. So freezing conditions, super cold conditions, makes your knife really susceptible to chipping, potential edge damage. And the other thing is you need to pay attention to things like knots that you might find in your wood. And combining frozen wood in frozen conditions with knots can be really damaging to your blades. So you do need to be careful and just pay attention to the conditions. But again, the S35 VN here, this here I would say is pushing about the limitation for what I want to do in terms of the span. No problem. These track really well through the wood. They are thin, but they are capable. Full flat grind, very nicely done. So the SE3, a little bit limited in terms of the overall span, but you can definitely do it.
RB3, love it. Puko style, Scandi, no relief edge, we just have it right here, okay? Comes really nice with a sharpened spine. Got that nice blunt tip. I'm not at all concerned about breaking that tip off. But batoning. Could get some cracking early, which is going to put a ton of stress on that Scandi. Roll it across. I have no chips, no dings, no rolls right now. Let's see what happens on this way oversized piece with knots for this little guy. Let's just put it to the test. I'm going to go right down the middle. Oh, this poor little guy. But $10.95. Give it a go. I think I have to stop right there. Limitations of your knife, it's just not, you risk injury, you risk damage of a tip of a knife that's not that thick here. We did it, we tried it, but we didn't complete the task. So I'm going to send this thing out and try to do it as safe as I can. Just kind of work it out. Unfortunately, when this happens, now you got to do a little bit of hitting on the handle, which I really don't recommend. You risk cracking the micarta. Stay back because the knife could fly out. Nice light taps, bring it out, there we go. So let's do what Eric did. We'll take some pieces off the side. Hopefully we should be in good shape. Nice. Know your limitations. Really, really important. I don't even know if I want to do any more on that, because I'm going to write down that knot. But if we have to make a fire, we just start getting wood thinned out. Perfect. So nice. Tracked wonderfully. We can get really small controlled hits. Look at that. Perfect spanning. Nice, nice knife. Feels really solid in the hand. Just got some length limitations. RB3. So when we have a 0 ground Scandi, that means we're grinding all the way to the very apex, okay? But with that said, if we were to hit that knot and it was really cold, I've done it with certain knives, you could get a big old chip or roll. So you just have to know that for all the advantages that these have for carving tasks, we are potentially putting a little bit of compromise to it, because think about how paper thin to nothing to 0 you're getting on the end. However, if you were to strop this over time and you didn't strop it properly, you stropped it at a light angle or ground it on a ceramic stone, you can get a nice little convex edge out of that. You can strengthen the edge of a Scandi. You're just going to lose the ability to have some really, finite slicing carving, okay? So I'd rather have a knife that comes full Scandi 0 ground, because I have the choice whether I want to bring it down to a slight convex. It's very difficult to do the other way around because you're grinding so much steel, but it'd be really cool if ESEE had one of these in a 4. But the RB3, it's actually one of my favorite bushcraft knives.
Now, going back to one of the early concepts, Shane definitely had some concerns with tip testing, with prying on knives. This is going to be a little bit different, but similar at the same time. We're going to get into some stabbing. Now, stabbing is a very effective means to splitting down your wood. We're going to start processing down now to getting our kindling ready for our fire. So here with the CM6, this could have a real good benefit because it has a sharpened swedge. Now, the other thing when you get into stabbing tasks, considering the handle geometry and how it indexes. So here you can see, I would call this a mid-size guard. It's not overly pronounced. You should have plenty of handle and the ability to get your thumb up on top for positive lockup. Now, I do still have a little bit of concern. You should have some nice traction on the side of the slabs, but at the same time, just being really careful. This is some thick wood. I'm still trying to stab through some significant stuff. Now, should this and can this do it? Well, It's hard to say. Good positive lock up here. Stabbing through. Now this is where it really stresses on the knife, that twisting action. I might have to take a second bite because when you have something that's that sort of stabby, you'll notice I went through the wood and down into my bearing surface. So just something to consider. If I get down into my original crack, again, you can definitely twist on the knife if you're careful. This is going to be a fairly refined tip, but it should be pretty sharp. It goes from unsharpened swedge into sharpened tip. So should be pretty durable, but you definitely want to be a little bit careful. But you'll notice for the stabbing tasks, this can certainly do it. Now this is really going to stress on the tip of the knife. You definitely need to be careful. Again, I'm going to take a second swipe at this. And there you go. I feel like this piece of wood, this should just literally sail right through it without any concerns. No problem. So CM6, real good for stabbing.
Got the 5. We know the first thing about the 5 that's going to be a concern is the glass breaker tip here. Okay, so we really have to be careful where we put our thumb, but we can bring it right up to the side. Actually, it shouldn't be too bad. All right, we'll take a nice piece here. This has got some good density. Get into it. I know Eric does a lot of stabbing and more, you know, a third down. I like to go a little bit more tip. It's just preference. Take advantage when a knife is buried in my bearing block. I take advantage of that. I twist out. Okay, we have some real stoutness with that 5. But let's keep going. No question, this didn't bother me at all. Blows it right apart.
So again, going back to my newfound infatuation with this laser strike, you'll notice at 3/16, this still has a fairly blunt tip. I mean, this is going to be really strong. Full flat, pretty much through the tip section. The saber doesn't start until a little further back, so should have some nice penetration overall. I'm going to go with Joe's method here, a little further up. Piece kind of fell apart on me. Flip it around. And there you go. So right away, this handle for stabbing is awesome. You definitely have some good distance away from the blade, so that helps. But this nice, round, soft pommel end, like look at the size of the handle. My pinky literally indexing right against that softened guard. And then my thumb over the top. This to me is the perfect and almost ideal handle for these stabbing tasks. In fact, when I design, I kind of design for this geometry. So this just speaks to me personally very well. I'm going to try a slightly thicker piece here to see how it does. I mean, just super tough. No worries at all they would have any problems, and I can slam down on this without any concern. So from quality of steel, toughness, but geometry, this is sweet.
All right, RB3. Just get into it. I'm gonna stop right there. This spine is so sharp that just in twisting, it actually chunked out some pieces and it caused a little bit of binding. That's interesting. I've never stab cut with this. The blade guard is a little smooth and not as pronounced as others. I don't have that choil and secondary, grip like I did the laser strike. My heart's pounding. I felt a little nervous that I could potentially slide with this knife. Again, we're dealing with more of a lateral twisting bushcrafty. I'm happy to say I don't recommend stab cuts with this, and I'm going to stop right there. Eric, I want to see, would you take a stab at it and let me know your thoughts, but be careful, buddy.
So to Joe's point, of course with every knife you need to be careful, but we're getting into a little more of a bushcraft style, slightly smaller, and of course that just ridiculously sharp Scandi grind. The nice thing actually about this, it does have a fairly stout tip, all things considered, so you're not going to have any problems with the knife. It's just, now we're talking geometry, right? So I'm going to put my thumb up over the top. That's like that added security. If the handle was much longer and I couldn't do this, I might think otherwise. I'm also going to go through a slightly thinner piece just for this demonstration, but to get a feel for it here, I feel what you're saying. There's not a lot of traction here. It's fairly slick, all things considered, and the ability to just roll off. And you can see I don't know if I even want to do this. My hand is definitely sliding down. Essentially I got through this. I can probably finish this off if I go a little bit lower here. Find that same crack. There we go. So can you do it? You can, but just remember, and with this entire theme, the right tool for the right job, you just need to be careful and understand the limitations. In this particular case, it's not so much about the steel, it's about the geometry. All right, so this is going to be a little bit of a gamble for the stabbing tasks for a couple of reasons. This here, the Zancudo. First and foremost, full flat grind all the way to the top, thin, 1/8 of an inch thick stock, S35. So again, remember that hardness discussion. We got to be a little bit careful. This might be a little bit chippy. A fairly refined tip, so we need to be a little bit careful. Now the other thing, let's talk about the handle and how this is going to work out for me. I do have the ability to wrap my pinky, get a little bit of a guard there. I feel like that should keep me fairly safe, and my thumb over the top for that positive lockup. So there are some attributes about this that I think will work to my advantage. Just trying to find the right piece of wood here that we can just test. So again, don't bite off more than I can chew. Let's give this a quick trial here. That is definitely a lot of shock on my thumb. And at that point, tends to weaken my grip just a bit to where, when I'm smashing on my pinky and I'm smashing on my thumb, this might not be the best test for this knife. So I might call it. Again, we're looking for limitations and we're trying to call the right tool for the right job. I can get into slightly thinner stuff. So, I just cracked on this end, which was thinner, and it can do it. So maybe in some cases, the right idea is just get yourself started. Who's to say you need to split entirely through all this wood? So if I could get this started, is that enough to kind of break myself off some pieces? Yes. So again, just be careful how far you're going to take it. I think this is going to be limited in the splitting tasks, but it can certainly help you along the way.
Got some little guys here. Two of my all-time favorites, Zola and Kangaroo. I thought this was more of a novelty. No way, shape, or form. A highly capable knife. Really, really good for little splitting tasks, feathering, and overall really small bushcraft fires. You got that nice shoulder, got a good, saber grind there, which is unique for a knife this size. It's overall strength too. If you're gonna do some sort of, hole, divots, whatever you need to do, it's got a lot of strength to this little guy. We know this knife the world over. It's just an amazing all-purpose, really pronounced blade guard there. Feels so safe with it. We've got some jimping, got a nice rounded pommel. So let's just get into it and do some stab tests. I'm gonna take a bigger piece here, really bigger than I should be with this knife, but I feel confident. It just locks in so confidently. With that nice 4-finger grip, it's a perfect platform to put your thumb down, get that extra security you need. We do have a full flat, so we got great for slicing, but we're gonna give it a test and see where it goes with the stab. I mean, I'm torquing on it. I'm twisting that blade, it's buried in. Felt so confident, no risk at all of sliding down. Real thick hardwood here. I am twisting on that blade, I popped it out. Look at that. No issues whatsoever. The Azula is one tough ant. I think we all know that. Let's get right into the Kangaroo and put this aside. This little guy. Hee hee. About a 3-finger grip, so really gotta hammer stab this thing. Be very, very safe. Be creative how you're gonna do it, because you don't get the full leverage of our thumb holding on the pommel. So all that safety is really relying on this little tiny finger guard, but let's just be creative, see what we can do. Yeah, dug in there good. Go a little right back here, see where we're at. You know, I'm gonna do something here. I'm a little twisted, but we'll send it right in. Work our way down. Still twisting that knife, believe it or not. This wood is really hard. But a great little knife. Bites right in. Nice shavings, which we'll get into a little bit later. But you know what though? You know, I'm gonna take it a step further. I'm gonna baton a piece with it. Why not? That's incredible. I mean, for a knife this size, what do I have, like maybe a 2-inch cutting edge? Kangaroo can do. Next, Eric, I think we should do some carving tests. Carving, notching, feather sticking is a little different. But just to show different lengths of knife, different grind types, and what kind of performance we can expect. Different handle, obviously. So let's just get into it and see what kind of carving we can get out of these things. I'm just going to basically hold a small piece, grab a knife. I like to choke up when I carve. Now it's funny, the stock Untitled has really just a flattened, I guess ricasso area. But if you put it on a grinder, you just cup it out a little bit. It just took 2 seconds on a grinder. I'm able to get a little bit of a spot that I can actually choke up on. It bites in initially on that apex, but as soon as you flatten out to all this real estate, it starts to struggle. You really got to keep it at a good angle to get any type of bite. Once we get it down, it makes it really difficult. Okay, but it can get the job done. Mine's not that sharp. I don't keep my Untitled laser beamed because I'm chopping brush. I'm hitting roots, hitting stumps. I don't want the risk of chipping in the field, so I do not keep my Untitled as sharp as I would some of my others. But certainly can do some carving.
ESEE thick, has that sort of mid-height saber grind. Should still be nice and slicey. You do have the ability to ride a little forward on your ricasso if you're careful. Every knife is going to have a slightly different edge geometry. It's going to take a little time to find it. This was a brand new factory edge today when we started all this field work, so should still be plenty sharp. Feels a little bit broad to me, but of course you can do all these carving tasks, and this is hard wood, so every wood will carve a little bit different. And we're just going to start to get ourselves some, I'd say, mid-size wood for, you know, slightly smaller kindling or slightly larger tinder. All of this will go to good use. As I bear down and dig, you'll see I can start to get some healthy chunks. I'm pretty much going with a hammer grip. I was a little forward the first time, now more of that full body grip here. You can hear the nice slicing capability. And that's it for the 5. So comfortable in the hand, nice full grip, definitely capable, maybe a little broad, but again, this is going to be sort of your heavier duty knife. We're going to turn the corner here into the 6HM, so this should be a little more slicey in comparison. So 3/16 inch, full flat grind, and that bushcraft handle. Let's see how we do here. So literally the exact same piece of wood. Even this is glancing just a little bit on this particular wood. This is hard, but as I take my time and start to find my edge geometry, this knife feels so much different from the 5. Just super light. Again, trying to find the edge and get some decent sized pieces. This is really going to help us sustain the fire early on until it really gets up to temperature. Having some nice stuff that's dry and will take a good spark is going to be critical. You can see as I bear down a little bit more, starting to get some healthier pieces. What I can tell you is, for my personal carving style, this is seemingly fatiguing my hand a little bit. As I grip, and it's going to be hard for you to see this, it leaves a little bit of a hollow spot between. So I end up with a great grip with my sort of forefinger and my thumb, and then also with my rear fingers, but in the middle, which is really the strength of my grip, it leaves it just a little bit hollow there, whereas the other handle style really fills that out. So it is something worth considering. I'm not going to say that this can't carve or is not a good carver. It's just for my hand size and my style, leaves my hand a little bit fatigued.
6HM. Let's get into it. I can stop right there. I agree with what Eric said earlier, and I do struggle sometimes with these wide pommels, whereas your natural grip, if you look, it's so much smaller. Your strength comes to me from the pinky up to your index finger, and with this being built oppositely, it forces you to want to really hug that little blade guard, but we don't have a lot of strength back here. I think this is an amazing all-purpose knife. You certainly can take advantage of that without even a lanyard and do some great chopping. Okay, but for the bushcraft tasks, you have to choke up, and I do feel that you're missing some strength. Love the knife, but again, knowing its limitations. Baton's great. You certainly can get right into it and get some nice chunks out of it, or do some notching and things of that nature. okay? But when it comes to some fine feathering, it doesn't feel as comfortable, quite frankly, as the 5 did. And I think a lot of that's due to the handle geometry. Look at the 5, you get that nice palm swell. Really pronounced blade guard. You get all your finger in there. Here, we just can't get the strength because we're trying to choke up, but at the same time we're pushing in that guard, causing our hand to cramp. So I'm a little fatigued right now from just using this knife. Not a lot, but a little, and I can feel it right in my forearm.
The laser strike's going to have a number of different grips, so you're sort of more hammer grip forward on the choil. To me, I feel like this is just begging for the thumb over the top. Control already is just fantastic. Nice grind as we go nice and simple, trying to get some of these feathers. I love the edge geometry on this. Real easy to find. I gotta tell you, and you've heard me say it a few times, this laser strike is really impressing me. I mean, just its general ability as a good quality field tool, it's fantastic. As I try to get some deeper bite, I mean, you can see that easily did the curls, deeper bite. So now getting back to one of the strengths here of the RB3 should be the carving. Now a Scandi grind is really going to want to bite and bite deep, but you should be able to go nice and easy for some super fine controlled feathers, which this edge is freaking awesome right away. You can see these curls are a little thicker than when I was doing with the laser strike, but that's okay. It's going to just take a little practice to lighten up and really get that paper thin stuff, but the effort is literally zero effort. The edge geometry, fantastic. The blade sharpness on this is great, even for something that's been used quite a bit. And you can see if I'm careful and take my time, I can find those paper fine curls. It'll just take a little practice, but look at how these are just curling over. That's the quality of these curls. And then hogging through the wood. A Scandi will just absolutely rip. So again here, no problem. This is a nice little carving knife. This is sweet.
First time using it, holding it, it's almost like a modern version of the Azula. But there's one thing I want to say about this Zancudo is you got stainless, so the first thing I'm noticing is this more aggressive drop point, which, as you know, if you're skinning, you're getting between the the skin and the meat vitals. You're not going to be hitting vitals. Okay, that's incredible. It's very difficult to do that with flat-topped, spined knives. So this is a great hunting knife when it comes to skinning game. Let's see how it performs, because the handle feels so good. 4-finger grip. Carving. Woohoo! Ooh-wee, that's some fine curls. That's fantastic. Try to get into some deeper. Oh yeah, let me get in there nice and deep, get some notching. Look at that's deep. That's impressive. Wow. To have the ability to have a hunting knife, wow, that can do the finer woodcraft fire prep tasks is incredible. I think this is This is like my unsung hero of the day. This is a great knife. Just gotta get back at it. Zancudo. So now we got our fuel, we got our tinder, we need our accelerant. Found some birch bark. We have a couple different options here in blade coatings and spines. We got, okay, the ability to put this in a grinder to make a nice sharp spine out of it, but we don't today. We have our coating. I'm going to say this is absolutely, we know that's not going to strike a fire. Same here. This has no coating, but it was tumble finished, and with that we have some nice soft edges on the spine. Okay, if we give it a try, we don't even need to do it. Okay, but we got the RB3. RB3 comes uncoated with a sharpened spine. So let's try to get some little scrapings off of this birch bark if the wind doesn't blow it away first, which it is. But we can do that, kind of bring it in, and let's see if we can get a spark. We have a lot of wind here today, Eric, so I don't know how effective this is going to be. Maybe we just try to make a little bit of a wind blocker. I don't know if that's going to work. And yeah, we'll see. I don't that's a little tiny guy right there. The wind is to our disadvantage. So we gotta pause. That's when you gotta do things over. Take the time. You get a little off of this, get some scrapes. A little tiny pile here. If you get that lit, then we gotta go ahead and grab our secondary pieces. Do it quick. Actually, that helped a lot, that wind blocker. Just not enough to grab. Well, in a survival situation, you know it gets even tougher. So, but you saw we had a little flame there, the wind took it right out. We're just gonna go lighter. Okay, so let's see what I'll do. A lot of times I'll just cup it like this, the wind's coming in from this direction. I get the insert here at my dad's old Zippo. Nice. Might as well do it right over our fire. Flip it around. Grab this guy here. Nice job with that build, bro.
Going?
That's good.
So now that we got the fire going, turning the corner a little bit into some food prep, each one of the knives is going to have a slightly different consideration. I'm going to start with the CM6. I thought this would be an interesting choice where it's got that sort of nice, I don't know, it's almost got a kitchen quality balance to it, where I think it'll perform pretty well for these tasks. Now, we're also going to use the RB3, being that Scandi grind and a little bit different. You know, it's nice to have a bushcraft knife that'll also do the food prep tasks. We have the stainless version of the ESEE 3 and the little kangaroo here just for some fun. So as we get into it here, the CM6. Of course, considering this has the sharpened swedge, just need to be a little bit mindful. Generally speaking, pretty good slicing capability, but I feel like just with some of the testing we've done, I've lost a little bit of the sharpness on the edge. That is a consideration with 1095, but the other thing about 1095, it's nice and field sharpenable. So if you have a leather strop or something like that in the field, should be more than enough to bring it back to good quality sharpness. And worst case scenario for me, as long as I don't chunk an edge, I can usually get it back with a fine ceramic rod. So in combination, that fine ceramic rod and then also honing it with that leather strop, but doing a pretty nice job. Now for the RB3. Feels very controlled for this action, which is nice. Not quite the same blade length, but you can certainly do these jobs a little closer in size to like a paring knife. Nice sharp edge. And good quality slicing capability. I'm going to turn the corner real quick to the ESEE 3. Very refined edge. Look how smooth and just precise these cuts are. Oop. Very nice and slicey. And now for some fun, the Kangaroo should be able to do these tasks. It's going to be a little bit small, but at the same time, should be able to do it. You never know when you're just going to only have that knife in your pocket, but I have to take a couple of slices at this, but you can definitely do it. And again, just a real nice refined edge. Feels great. I mean, more than slicey enough to do this work. As you can see here, really nice refined edge. So, very cool, neat little blade.
It was new as of this morning, but Eric's brand new 6HM. Broomstick handle. We talk about cracking nuts or breaking glass. I'm going to try something a little different here today. I'm going to try to mortise and pestle some coffee beans. We're actually doing it. We didn't have a coffee grinder in the field, and the rock is a little bit too jagged. We do have our ESEE, and we'll see what we can come up with here. We're making some grinds down there. We'll just see if we finish this, Eric, and then get some coffee going.
Absolutely.
All right.
So unlike some of the other blades that we've seen today, this one actually having sort of the most conducive back end to it. You know, the ESEE 5 has a sharp point, wouldn't really work too well. The 6 has an exposed tang, wouldn't work too well. But here, it's actually working fairly well, all things considered. And by the end of this process, I'm actually gonna get myself a nice coffee patina on this handle. So I mean, this is going to take a while, but you definitely can do it. Pretty cool. Now, I don't know how fine you like your grounds, but I was able to get these pretty well processed, all things considered. What do you think, Joe? How did I do?
I still can't believe how well you did. I think that back in the day, before coffee grinders, these were just chunks of bean. Who knows who we're drinking? That's
what? Wait, what?
I don't know. There's no cheating on YouTube, Eric. You know that.
YouTube's all truth.
This is not fair. We didn't see this.
Oh, take two. So as I continue on with some of the food prep, I'm just gonna slice up some cheese and some salami, having ourselves a nice little, I call it a charcuterie board. So using the HM6 here, nice handle length, nice blade length, very slicey. That full flat grind is gonna be wonderful for this. Yeah, man! Nice clean cuts, even on a softer cheese, the ability to go down and through. Nice clean cuts. The laser strike. Now you can see, binding up a little bit. It's not quite as sharp, it has a little more, let's just call it field time. So the edge could probably use a little strop. Being that high saber grind, again, not going to be quite as slicey as the SE6, but it definitely can still do these tasks nicely. Pretty clean cuts overall, but something like the Zancudo is going to be fantastic. Really small but easy to use, and the stainless properties is going to be wonderful. This will clean up nicely, even if you're out camping. You know, the ability to get this into like a river and just clean that up real quick will be no problem. Super clean cuts. Really nice. Hey Joe, what do you got going on over there?
I'm using my Untitled spatula / fire poker to prepare the food. It's nice to have the distance, to be able to get in here and not burn your hands. Just sit back and kind of poke the fire, get it in, just gets it done. Very versatile, the right tool for the right task. Having fun with the Untitled. So we got the 6HM. We got a lot of hot coals down here, but you just do it quick, smart about it. It's able to get in there, a lot of heat out of here. I really can only stay here for a couple seconds. But versus a Kangaroo, which I couldn't get here at all, I'm at least able to get in, kind of whack the coals underneath, do a little bit of scraping off that soot, but in camping and old primitive bushcraft tasks, oh, am I sharpening my blade? I've done it. Looking good, cooking fast. And if I grab a knife,
Please do.
All right, I don't have a spoon. Yeah, we'll sweeten it up. Now we gotta get your coffee, Eric. Cheers. Perfect. No grounds. How'd that happen? I'll pour for you since someone's got to do the filming. Fill her up?
Yes, sir.
All right.
This wouldn't be the out of doors without it. Woo, baby.
Woo! There it is. Okay.
Well earned, buddy.
Well earned.
Flavor bites.
Nice. This looks like some spicy sausage we got here.
It is.
I love the spicy sausage.
Little char, but I'll tell you, that's what makes it good.
Ooh.
So each one of the knife tips is going to impact your ability to kind of pick it out. You can see the Zancudo is actually struggling just a little bit, but it can do it. RB3, little struggle.
Little struggle. Once to cut it up. Be ginger on the stabs.
You know what this tells me? ESEE needs a clip point.
Right?
They don't have any. I know someone who could design one.
Really? I think we might have to get that accomplished. Maybe like a clip point Bowie style.
I haven't seen. That's what I'm saying.
Oh my gosh! Well, food for thought.
Did you say food for thought?
No pun intended.
Go at it here with the CM6.
Ooh.
That's probably. Careful though. Sharpened swedge.
Right.
Hard.
We grab more of a spatula style. Maybe the laser strike could do some scooping.
You going spatula?
Ooh.
Worked. Yeah, see?
That's good.
This is what I'm talking about.
That's a nice stab.
See?
I think if I want to spread peanut butter though, I may use a laser strike. I just see it. Here we go.
All right, so at this point, we've done the fire prep, we've done the food prep. What about those utility tasks? Let's take a quick look at some basic sort of utility tasks. You'll see what we're talking about.
Baton it.
Baton it.
It was a useful shoe, Eric. Hey, CVA insole.
So at this point, we have a number of materials we can use for some cutting and stabbing tasks. So here, leveraging the CM6, shouldn't be too difficult to get right through this foam. Very smooth, nice and buttery smooth. And even after all the fire prep tasks, the ability to get on this and cut right through, that works well. Now, keep in mind this also has that sharpened swedge, which actually gives you sort of a secondary blade. Now that's not quite as sharp as the primary edge, but at the same time it can do it, as that primary edge goes right through. So the CM6, very good for stabbing and penetrating. A little thicker here with some leather. Right through. And slicing with ease. So that's going to be a nice slicey blade for some of these slightly tougher tasks. Now back to the laser strike just for a second, because my impression was this is a little of a, I don't know, more blunt tip. So trying to stab through, it's definitely going to take more effort. Slicing capability, not too bad. Kind of need to literally slice, and when you do that it'll go through a lot smoother. Not bad. And then stabbing through the leather, it will do it. Not quite as smooth as the CM6, but it definitely can do it.
I'm gonna grab more of the EDC belts and see what kind of cutting we can get done here with just the old garden hose here. It's hard. Stuff's reinforced, I can tell. So we're gonna have to do some slicing. It's tough. Oh yeah. There we go. Nice. Oh, that goes right through. No problem. Wow. Beautiful. Let's grab the RB3 with that Scandi. It's a little bit wider when it shoulders out, so it's kind of pushing the reinforced nylon aside. The first cut's nice and smooth, but then you really got to work it. Not as slicey as the 3. Let's try the Zancudo. Wow! I'd have to say, Eric, that's the easiest of all of them. Let me try that 3 again. Tough. I feel like there's more power behind the 3, just in the handle. I can really torque down on it a little bit better. But they both cut just the same. This shoulders out a little bit and it causes a little bit of binding, and you really got to put some more pressure on it when you get past that Scandi. Yeah, but does the job. Still has great control. Nice job on the tube cuts, all 3 of those guys.
Definitely going to be a lot more difficult with the blade and the leverage, and like the question is like, where do you grab it, and you know, are you trying to do this controlled, or are you just trying to get rid of hose? If you're just trying to get rid of hose, I mean, that's easy. If you're trying to be controlled, it's a different story. Let's try real quick here. It's probably next to impossible, but at this point you can see just pulling through. I mean, I made it 3/4 or even more. I mean, 90% of the way through. That's just tough. CM6. again, gonna just have to find the method and the leverage. It is binding a little bit. I gotta probably be a little more tactical and slice. So you see, it's not just gonna do it with brute force. So again, just being a little more tactical on my cut here, getting down and through. It's a little bit wide, but at the same time, it can do it. And I suspect with the laser strike, I'm probably gonna struggle a little bit if I had to guess, but the knife has surprised me the entire day. Probably not as keen of an edge right now where this has been thoroughly used. Might just need a little bit of a touch up, but again, take your time and it will do it. Fairly clean, a little bit of tearing, not too bad.
All right, so we got some pretty good gauge polypropylene rope. Let's just get in with this double strand here on the RB3, see where we're at. This rope is real tough, don't let anybody fool you. It's hard. Let me see. 2. Easy there. Yeah, could be dulling up a little bit. Okay, let's try the 3 in this 35 VN. Ooh! Thinner stock, full flat, slicey. Here we go. Proof is in the pudding. That gets right through. That's nice. Wow. Try to choke up a little bit, see if it's a little bit easier. Much more power. Even that little choil does a nice job. Let's check out the Zancudo. This has been a great performer all day. Ooh, shreds that. Wow. I think that S35 VN is holding its edge a little bit better than the 1095s. A little tougher because of lack of control back here. My pinky's slipping off. But if it was just a little bit longer, I feel I get a lot more power out of it. I'm slipping a little bit back here, but jimping in that ramp is subtle enough to get a little bit more power up front. Yeah, that's good. All perform very well. I'd say in rope performance, I'd say number 1, number 2, number 3.
So now, slightly larger blades, laser strike. It's gonna definitely slide at this point. I feel like we've given these blades a good run for the money. It will get through it. But we're struggling just a little bit. So that was with the laser strike. CM6 was brand new at the beginning of the day. That's still going pretty nice. You do not have a finger choil. And it'll go. It would be nice to have that forward control. And the hungerless, well, gonna have to be a little bit careful. This will do it with ease. We already knew that. Can certainly cheat a little bit. And taking your time down on that belly. It's tough. And of course, trying to do this without cutting myself. Joe, there you go. All right, so Joe, yeah, survival attitude.
Oh, outer limit limitless. Boy, we did a lot of work today.
That was a huge amount of work, but you know how much we just learned and witnessed and hopefully shared with everybody that was just useful information. I know personally I learned a ton about all these great blades and just about knives in general.
It was incredible. We have certain aesthetic appeals we like about the knives. Sometimes that's how we make a purchase, like the looks of that one. But at the end of the day, you know, if you're into handy person work around your home, LE, military, or bushcraft, firecraft, camping, hiking, backpacking, which you and I greatly enjoy, you know, we're not going to carry 3 or 4 blades with us. We have to really think about not just what we're going to be doing. That's the obvious food prep, which they all can do, right? But like my buddy who flipped that canoe, that's a very dire situation, okay? He had the wrong tool for the task. You have to consider, if it's colder, I need to make a shelter. Do I need swinging ability? Should I have a hungerless? Do I, you know, have a Scandi because I want to spend days in the woods? I want to make some notches. I want to make a fire pot holder. Could I have to make a snare or a trap? That Scandi is going to really beaver into that wood. Do I need a sharpened spine? Some people are smokers. They have cigars and cigarettes. They have a lighter with them already.
Right.
Not all of us do. So we're relying on a ferro rod. Even if we don't have like an RB3 with a sharpened spine, do we throw a quick grind on a 6 or a 5 to get that ability? We can. Do we put a pinky lanyard on a mid-sized knife like a 4 or a 6 to get much more swinging power? That's what a nickel modification,
right?
Okay.
No, and it's so true. And even, you know, you talk about the blade geometry and the blade capabilities, but the handle, the entire package, and we didn't even touch the sheath. The sheath really does add to and make or break the user's experience. That's a whole topic for another day.
The sheath is a whole topic for another day. To prelude that, maybe we should talk about that in the out of doors. You think about this, right? If you're hiking in Colorado Rockies and somehow you slip, you're going to poke right through this like nothing, and you could really hit an artery. Okay, we have something like a custom sheath. I got a couple here. You know, Yellow Hawk Custom Outdoors, Doug Wilson. We have 0.93 all around Kydex. The chance of this poking through and causing damage is far less. Slim to none.
Slim to none.
So from handle modifications to sheath type, or the simplest approaches a novice can do, throw a pinky lanyard on, throw an extraction bead. For example, some of the slickness of this handle, because it's just softened over time, I struggled getting this out of the sheath.
Right.
I made this little thing. Now I can grab it,
right,
pull it right out quickly. So these are things that you could do if you had just one knife. You don't need a lot of tools to do these items. But going back to the original discussion that you and Shane had, the right tool for the right task, I think just anticipating your conditions, time of year, but more importantly, not just what you're going to use it for on a perfect scenario, what could go wrong.
It's the imperfect scenario.
The imperfect scenario is when you don't want to have the wrong knife cutting or the wrong knife stabbing or potentially causing damage because you don't have control in the swing. Think about all these wonderful options, not just from ESEE, but any manufacturer, any superstore. If you're going to spend 20 bucks on a knife, you got a couple different options. Try to at least plan in your mind what that scenario is going to be and what could go wrong. That will help you not just enjoy your experience, but potentially save lives.
That's right.
Potentially save lives.
Well, Joe, I mean, to everybody watching, I think we learned a huge amount today. I appreciate the time. It was fantastic. I hope you guys enjoyed that full featured video today. Shane from ESEE and all the guys at ESEE, thank you very much. We greatly appreciate it. So with that, this was the Out of Doors episode 7, Survival Attitude. Great job.
Great job, Eric. Thank you so very much. What a wonderful morning.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.
Absolutely.